All right. Hello and welcome into Believe in Steelers. We are powered by FanDuel. I'm Jarrett Bailey. That's the man who calls the plays on our program, Todd Haley. It's good to see you, pal. How's it going?
Doing good. Crazy weekend of football with one to go. That's a lot of football over the course of Christmas, Saturday, Sunday. Unfortunately for the Steelers, hard to get excited about a lot, but It is what it is.
Yeah, weather-wise, too, has been crazy. It was like in the mid-50s yesterday here in Pittsburgh. I'm staring out my window right now, and snow has begun to fall. So we are in the midst of the just typical Midwest winter where it feels like a nice fall afternoon one day and Armageddon the next. So looking forward to seeing what that brings over the next few hours. Yeah, the Steelers had a chance going into Cleveland to clinch the AFC North and make Week 18 for all intents and purposes, a meaningless game. They would have had the 4 seed locked down, would have been, they could have arrested some guys and whatnot. But they go into Cleveland, they lose their 4th consecutive game in Cleveland, 13-6, in a game where play calling, I thought, was at a low point this season. I think decision making from Aaron Rodgers in key moments was pretty bad. We'll dive into all of that and give our respective opinions. Overall, I'll start with you. Just your thoughts on everything that went down on Sunday, whether it be the slow start defensively or just the offense looking incredibly anemic, especially in key moments.
Well, I knew it was a dangerous game. The defense eased into it a little bit, obviously, but you're missing a key guy in DK Metcalf, and when a guy like that is not there, not that he is catching 10 balls a game and putting up 180, 200 yards a game. The fact that his body is not there with his speed and ability to stretch the defense. So now where do you go? And I was really worried about that going into it. I thought that Arthur Smith probably had to be really creative, maybe tight ends split outside of receivers all the way out to the numbers. With those, because it's more slot receivers when you start talking about Thielen and Scotty Miller and those guys. I mean, they're really inside slot type receivers. So it's hard to play out there, especially against good corners, which the Browns have. So, the problem they had was, how are you going to give help if you're splitting tight ends out wide? How are you going to give help to the tackles with Myles Garrett? So it was a conundrum, but ultimately, what bothered me maybe the most was, no under center runs in critical situations. It might have been 3rd and 8, run it from under center. Maybe you get 4, you're in a go for it type situation, but those became sacks at different times or incompletions. And now you're kind of out of whack. The one time they did run it on 3rd and 4 or 5, they were in the gun and ran it sideways and took a loss. So, I just didn't see the commitment to the real run game, and a lot of people don't always see it the way that I see it. But being under center and the back in the home position coming downhill really puts stress on a defense. Number one, the back gets a full head of steam. Number 2, play action becomes real instead of fake. And whether that's Aaron saying, if you ask any quarterback, especially older quarterbacks, you want to be in the gun or under? Oh, put me in the gun. They want to be in the gun, but they care about themselves. They don't care about the overall picture. So, was kind of frustrated by that a good bit during the game. I just thought there were some situations, even if you ran it 3 times and punted it and keep winning field position, the offense eventually of the Browns wasn't doing anything.
Yeah.
Shador tried to throw it to the Steelers a couple more times. If they hold on to it, it's big plays, but. And then the end of the game, great job getting down there. And then, 3 fades against one of the better corners in the league. That didn't make a lot of sense to me. So I just saw a little disconnect. Aaron Rodgers is as smart as any quarterback there is at understanding 12 men on the field. You saw a couple times him, on the sideline, they weren't paying attention. So they're sending players out. He's yelling. He's got to be in control in certain situations, but in others, I just feel like you got to say, man, we're under center and we're running the football downhill.
For me, the slow start defensively really drove me insane because, yeah, they cleaned it up through the final three quarters. But when you get down 10-0 right away, Shador throws up a hot air balloon that Kyle Duggar couldn't track and find. And I know he made up for it later because Shador decided to throw up another pop fly that Kyle Duggar did find and catch. But whenever you have situations like that where you can keep him out of the end zone, and instead it turns into 6 points the other way, it proved to be the game-winning score. It's things like that when you start off slow and you on both sides of the ball, you can't put up points in the first quarter, and you make Shador Sanders look like Joe Namath, then that snowballs and has a lingering effect. Like I said, the defense cleaned it up. Jack Sawyer had a pick, but then that brings in the questionable play calls where they get into 4th and 1, and Jaylen Warren averaged over 5 yards a carry. I just think that I can think of 10 different things that you could do in that situation instead of a go ball to Scotty Miller when you're on the brink of the red area. Your run game's been playing really well. And even on that play, if Adam Thielen's wide open underneath, Aaron doesn't really look at him. It felt kind of predetermined that he was going to go to Scotty there. That didn't make a whole lot of sense. After they get the pick from Kyle Duggar, they have a 15-yard run right off the rip. They don't run the ball again, and they end up punting 3 plays later. It just felt like, we've talked about this before. There's a difference between play calling and calling a game. Didn't feel like there was a lot of synergy between the play calls, and it didn't feel like there was a complete game plan in place. Aaron throws the ball 40 times in this game. They're averaging over 5 yards a run. They only run it 21 times against a run defense in Cleveland that has been susceptible. We saw it last week against Buffalo to give up big runs. I didn't understand why they weren't just plowing it, flipping the amount of times that they ran. If you run it 40 times and throw it 20 times, I think they win the game.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And I think that, kicking a field goal on their first drive, big deal. Yeah. That's not a big thing. Your guys are settling in. Shador made a couple throws. But that Duggar play, I mean, that for all intents and purposes should have been an interception. I mean, that was, to not play the football in that scenario, I would have been bashing my head against the wall. Now he made up for it. I get it. But, now all of a sudden it's 10-0. And it just felt like, when you talk about what the game plan is, that panic set in a little bit and they felt like they had to do a little too much, as opposed to me, that game plan was cut and dry. Run the football, run it again. If you got to punt it. Your defense is going to stop that offense. In my mind, how many points are the Browns going to score? That's the question. Yeah. Mike Tomlin used to always ask me on Friday. I'd say, how many points do we need? And he'd say, in a game like that, I bet you he would have told me 14. And that's really all they needed. So play the game accordingly. But I think when they got down 10-0, a little panic ensued, and then just got out of sorts as far as how they were playing. So really frustrating game, I'm sure, for everybody involved, coaches, players, fans alike. I mean, because you had a chance to put a nail in the coffin and, like you said, rest a lot of guys that need it desperately and get ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, and that brings up, the conversation that always comes up. And you and I might disagree here, and that's totally fine. We're going to disagree on some things, but I obviously do want to hear how you feel. But I'll get on a little soapbox here real quick. A stat came out after the game, and Pittsburgh's last 5 games against teams 8 or more games under 500. They are 0-4-1, which is the worst stretch in NFL history in that specific scenario. And, when you look over the last 5 years or so, different coordinators, quarterbacks, receivers, defensive players and whatnot, it always seems to end up in this situation where the Steelers have to win to get in the final week or get a little bit of help from the outside. This week, obviously, it's winning in. If they lose, they're done. And so the calls for maybe a change of leadership at the head coach position are loud again. And I think I probably lean on that side right about now. We've seen, yes, it's scary to make changes, and there's no guarantee that the guy that you hire afterwards would be a home run. The comparison I turn to would be the Patriots. The last couple of years of Bill Belichick weren't great. They swing and miss with Gerard Mayo, but they get Drake May and they hire Mike Vrabel, and they're back to being one of the best teams in football again. So there's no guarantee that if they were to move on from Mike Tomlin, that the guy that they would hire would be an immediate home run. But I do think that there is an argument to be made where, they've kind of hit their head against this wall a bunch of times for the last 5 years or so, and it's resulted in the same things, and maybe a change is warranted. What say you?
Well, I think you go back in history, at least I'm old enough, you're not, but when Terry Bradshaw went away, after being a mainstay, and Chuck Noll was seen as one of the great coaches of all time, Terry Bradshaw has surgery on his elbow, doesn't play anymore. All of a sudden it looked pedestrian, and all of a sudden everybody wants Chuck Noll out. They didn't draft Dan Marino, unfortunately. If they had, who knows what that scenario would have looked like. And the same thing in New England. When you don't have Tom Brady, you look like a lot different coach than you do when you have him. And I think that's really what's going on. So then it's up to the people in charge to measure. Is the team responding to the head coach, the coaching staff? Or is this just a quarterback problem? And to me, this is you're plugging a hole right now with Aaron Rodgers, and I think it was the best scenario for all parties, Aaron included. But it's not the solution. It's a temporary solution. So the key in the Patriots comparison is Drake May.
Yeah,
you were up in the draft in a spot. You took a guy. It looks like he's going to be a big timer. And you hire a really good coach. So, I'll stand by it. I think these players respond and listen and are very coachable to Mike Tomlin. It's almost a quarterback problem to me. Now, with that being said, over this last few stretches, once Ben retired or got older and then retired, they seem to be a crisis personality team. When their backs are against the wall, you see a great response. That's usually a good coaching sign. But also is the ability to play lesser competition. My father used to, when I became a head coach, he'd say, Todd, win the games you're supposed to win. And then the others, just do your best. And if you can split them, you're doing good. But you have to win the games you're supposed to win. And that was a game, to me, the Steelers were supposed to win, and they didn't get it done.
See how we can disagree without screaming at one another. I think a few people could learn something from that on certain networks. And this is far from the first year that this conversation's been had. I think really since Ben retired, this conversation's been had pretty often, and I think it comes back to taking a swing at Kenny Pickett, and that didn't work out at all. He gets traded after 2 years. You bring in Russ and Justin Fields last year. Aaron Rodgers this year. So they're doing a lot of different things. And I do admire that. I do applaud the fact that they immediately recognize, all right, this certain thing didn't work. Let's try something else with a different guy, maybe a few different pieces, and see if that works. They're not, just standing completely still with their sand in the mud and just letting it sink. Omar Khan, Mike Tomlin, they have tried a few different things, and it just hasn't lifted them to that elite potential. But I can applaud them at least for trying something new. But like I said, I also see the other side where, if they lose on Sunday and they miss out on the postseason, or even if they do get in and they lose in the wild card round, and that's going on now 9 years without a playoff win. And there are not too many examples throughout history where guys have stuck around in the same position with a stretch that long. I think Marvin Lewis was the head coach in Cincinnati for 18 years without a playoff win. So I want to say that's the longest of all time. So very few examples of where, situations like that last very long, but we'll obviously see what happens with that. So we'll be back later on the week to preview that game on this specific program. But we'll be back in your podcast feed on the Pump Fake to recap everything that went down in Week 17. We'll talk to you soon, right here, Believe in Steelers.